good afternoon, no matter where in the world all of you are. Thank you so much for joining my business partner, Debbie DeGroat, and myself, Ben Kinney, for a very special end of the year webinar where we get talking about what we think is going to happen this year and how you can plan for making next year, 2026, the best year ever. Debbie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, we have a huge group here today, Ben. So I would really encourage them, type in the chat box. Hey, I see people from all over the country. And hello there to Coeur d'Alene, one of my favorite places, Washington, your neighborhood, Ben. So we've got such an amazing group. And I saw lots of friends, um, clients, people that you and I have known forever. So we better make it good.
Yeah, can't screw this one up. Please keep the chat lively and interactive. Feel free to ask questions, make comments, or share ahas the entire time. You never know, Debbie and I might send a couple items of value out to some people in chat that participate and kind of keep this community going today. So awesome. Let's get this party started, so to speak. So Debbie said, should we talk a little bit about industry news and the economy for a bit? I think it's worthwhile mentioning, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on there. What are some of the most impactful things that have happened so far this year in the industry that I think all of us should be aware of? Uh, Let me think. One uh, is Rocket Mortgage buying Mr. Cooper and Redfin. I think that's something of note that we should all pay attention to. That roughly gives them access to like 30 to 40% of all mortgages in America. And they are constantly marketing those people to use agents of their choice, not the agents that actually help those people buy the homes, like all of you on the call. So I think you should be all cognizant of that. Large lawsuit right now against Zillow, kind of questioning if their referral fees are actually inflating the cost of buying a home to home buyers because it's not really disclosed. I think that'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. And overall, lots of consolidation of tech and companies that started off as really, really big deals and now maybe some are tapering off and some are getting new capital. I don't know. I'm kind of excited to see what happens in the industry. Nothing that really shakes me to my core. Anything stand out to you, Deb?
I guess, based on what you just said about Rocket, it made me think, well, this is maybe a good warning or a good reminder to get their sphere in gear, right? Because if they haven't heard from you for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, even if they love you, that wears off and others are marketing to them. So I thought one of our clients made a great comment yesterday. They said, I've decided 2026, I'm digging a moat around my past clients in Sphere. And it's like nobody's going to cross that moat, which means increase marketing, increase conversations, and really showing up as a wise advisor to their people.
Yeah. I think that's a good comment. When the NAR lawsuit came out last year, I was uh, I was expecting a much larger reduction in sell side commissions on average, but we've been tracking it through our transaction companies and our software companies to see exactly what it is. And we've actually seen a small couple basis point increase on buy side commissions over time. And I think you see happening was prior to the kind of industry disrupting lawsuit that happened a year and a half ago, agents accepted the amount of pay that the listing agent offered as selling office commission. But with the law changes, agents now negotiate directly with their clients and with the sellers for the amount of monies that they feel are warranted for the services they provide. And a lot of agents that we're tracking, it actually is as either had no impact, minor
Right.
impact, or a small increase for sure.
So Ben, are you able to turn your volume up?
It is maxed out, Deb. I'm not sure what's going on there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. They're saying they can't hear you as well as they can hear me.
We'll see if that's a little better. I just moved my computer close to me. Everybody.
Yep, they say they can hear.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about uh, the economy. I just got some information from Goldman Sachs actually last night. Let me pull up what they said. Uh, literally from Goldman Sachs 15 hours ago. Affordability remains constrained. Unfortunately, renting is still more affordable than owning nationwide. ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, are only 50 basis points below a 30-year fixed. I think that's interesting. Home
Mhm.
prices, year-over-year appreciation has fallen to the weakest levels since 2023. The Case-Shiller index turned positive month over month after 5 declines. Kind of fascinating. I think next year it's going to be okay. Rates will drop and home values will start to increase. I'm turn it over to you for a second, Deb, and I'll see if I can work on the mic.
Yeah, so I guess, as we look at these conversations, I think that a lot of you have buyers that are sitting on the fence and they're waiting to time the market perfectly. But when you think about it, rates are not terrible. There's awesome buy down programs, and most of these mortgages they can refi for free in the future. What an awesome time, really, to be a buyer if you think about holidays, which often get a bit quieter in some markets. You think about properties with extra days on market, sellers who are anxious to have their homes sold by the end of the year. This is really a good time to be having those conversations with your buyers. And I think the magic's in the math. I know, Ben, that I was talking to Chris Stewart, the president of Place, and also, really involved with Envoy Mortgage. And we were looking at their cost of waiting mortgage calculator. And it's pretty amazing if you can get your buyer to sit down with a great LO and look at the math and find those benefits today, because there's a lot of buyers that are just sitting there waiting, and I, quite frankly, I don't know what they're waiting for. This is a great moment to strike.
Yeah, where's chat? Let me know. I just tried to fix the mic. Did that fix it
Much
at all?
better. I can tell on my end too. Much better.
Thanks, everybody. I don't know what happened there. We'll pivot and move on. Okay, turn it over to you for a second, Deb.
Yeah. So a lot of us, many of you here, have read the book Science of Scaling. And we've had a lot of people reaching out to me saying, Ben, they want to set really, really, really big goals for next year. And often the question is, well, what's too big? How aggressive should I be? How much do I need to consider the market when I'm setting these highly aggressive goals? So I think that's where, I'd love to hear your thoughts and how you're advising your teams and the people in your world.
About truly like setting and achieving strong goals.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm hearing a lot is this a year, is 2026 a year where I can count on maybe a little bit of lift from the market? And is that a time where I should really say, I'm going for the gusto? And I'm not just going to say, I want a 20% improvement. I want a 50% improvement. I've even talked to some in the last couple of days that say, I'd like to double my production in 2026. So I've always been a little cautious, Ben, from a coaching perspective. when I sit in a room, and I've heard coaches in the past say, write down your goal and then double it, then triple it, then quadruple it, and go for it. Because there's kind of that fine line between I'm stretching for something exciting, or I've set a goal so high, I already don't believe in it. And therefore, my business plan ends up in the drawer. So I don't know. What's your advice?
Debbie, keep going. I'm going to fix this echo problem.
Sure. So when we think about motivation, I don't know if some of you remember that on last year's webinar, Ben talked about motivation, and he showed on the very next slide a pile of bull poop. And his point was motivation, it doesn't last, right? So we could say a lot of super exciting things and tell you guys you're awesome, kind of the locker room speech, get you all excited. And then literally a half hour after the webinar is over, that's gone. So motivation is not going to drive you to achieve the big aggressive goals next year. What's going to drive you is having a purpose. And everyone has a different purpose. Your purpose might be, you're the sole support of your family. You have no choice. Your purpose might be the great things that you can do for your church, for your charity. Your purpose is your purpose, but you got to find it and you got to use it. And that's the lever that will push you to achieve what you need to achieve. But then, Ben, of course, we can have the purpose, we can have the goal, but then if we don't have the plan for implementation, I almost think of it as the recipe, or here at Forward, we call it the blueprint. Our goal in coaching is to figure out their blueprint, because when you have a blueprint to follow and the actions are clear, it actually kind of makes it easy. Just show up and do the work, right? So consistency. I have a book here on my shelf behind me. Some of you have read it. James Clear, I think it's Highly Effective Habits. I can't remember the title in the moment. Awesome book. And the thing that James talks about is when your actions are performed on a consistent basis, even small actions over time create new and powerful habits that will create masterful changes in your business. So for an example, I was figuring out with someone the other day, if they just went to work 30 minutes earlier every day, it added something crazy, like more than a month of work to their year. Like they gave themselves an extra month to succeed in the year. And so think about, number one, I've got to set my goal, but that goal has to be something that it's high enough to make me stretch, but it's not so high that I don't believe in it, right? So you got to be sure it is what you're prepared to go to battle for. Then we want to have that success blueprint with our consistent actions that will become habits over time. And now, Ben, we got to watch out for complacency, because complacency can be our enemy. And sometimes complacency shows up because you guys just feel you're overworked. Are you using your technology as leverage? Are you hiring additional support as your budget allows? Are you just making excuses that you're too busy because you're avoiding things that are hard? Right, Ben?
Yeah, I think let's do an audio test, everybody. Is this better?
Yep, it's good.
Chat, help me out.
I think it sounds great on my end. Can you guys hear?
Yeah, we had to switch to the phone. I don't know what was going on there. Just one of those days, Debbie, that technology was not going to help us. It was going to hinder us. So let's get back into this. Thanks for saving me, Deb. Uh, you taught me this kind of spend it on paper exercise, and where we're thinking about what is our hourly rate and how are we using our time, and then uh, deciding our time is either income producing or not income producing. And my entire career of being coached by you, you've always kind of hammered this simple sentence into me: Ben, you need to care about your hourly rate, because you can't probably work more hours and still have any sort of resemblance of a good life. So your way to make more income is to increase your hourly rate, not to increase your actual hours. You asked us to kind of put together and do a time study. Kind of explain how this works, Deb.
Sure. So if you took the next 2 weeks, which is the perfect time of year to do this, right? Because it's got just the fact that you do your time study makes you more likely to do a better job because you're focused on it. We know as we start to head to the holidays, things get distracting, but remember, holidays did not begin at Halloween, so we're still working. But if you just took a scratch pad and every 15 minutes or so, you write down what you're doing in that moment and just don't waste a lot of time, just jot it as you go. Then at the end of the day, go back and make a little code next to each activity. Was it IP, income producing? Which, Ben, that would be pretty obvious, things that are going to create new revenue, lead gen, follow up, out on appointments with buyers and sellers, holding an open house, things that will produce income, or IS, income servicing, meeting with an inspector, meeting with an appraiser, all things you need to do to support the business. Of course, hoping that some of those things could be delegated either through technology or perhaps an awesome VA or transaction coordinator as you can afford it, because your goal is to do less income servicing as your budget allows. And then S for stuff you shouldn't be doing. But Ben, here's the thought. If they could have 30% of their day be income producing, odds are that would knock it out of the park for them. Most strong agents that we coach, if they can track about 30% income producing, they do really well in achieving their goal. And then the next step is get to 50%. Now, some of you who are team leaders and you have a lot of leverage around you, your goal, just like Ben and I, our goal is to be at 80% income producing. So tally it up. Find your distractions, find your time wasters. What can you interrogate that's in your schedule that should be removed from your schedule?
If you think about the 80-20 rule, and 20% of your activities will generate 80% of your income, you don't need to double the amount of hours. You just need to change how you're using your hours. If you literally took Debbie's advice and said, I'm going to spend 30 or 40% of my time on things that generate the highest amount of money per hour, that is the secret to maximizing your income in 2026. Here's the other reality. Some high percentage, 50%, 40%, 30%, 60% of the things you do have zero impact to your life. They are neither income serving or income producing. They're just filler. In fact, I like to say that almost all appointments on my calendar are other people's priorities, not mine. And I try to minimize the amount of those appointments that I have so that I can focus on the things that would make the biggest difference in my life. And you accomplish that by interrogating your schedule. by putting pressure on your activities, by stopping certain things and seeing if it makes an impact in any way. And if it doesn't, don't restart it. And then doubling down on the things that you believe would make the biggest impact. For me, it was, how do I generate a minimum of 1 appointment a day every day? And that was the kind of secret to 24 to 50 sales a year. And once I got good at doing that through coaching, through practicing, through mastery, through better focus on who to call, that's when I was able to get to the 2 appointment a day average. And everything kind of compounds from that point forward. So now we want to talk actually about goal setting. And I want to do this exercise with Debbie real quick. And Debbie, if you would do me a favor and just grab a piece of paper.
Let me get a pen. All right, got it.
There's easy ways inside your technology. I'm showing you a screenshot of Brivity, which, you know, a lot of the top teams in the United States use to run their business. We have goal setting, activity tracking, all of that built into our software. And this is what a really great team's business would look like. So if your actual business doesn't look like this inside of Brivity, you're probably not entering and managing and using all the tools to its full ability. You can reach out to them and talk about it. But I want to talk about this kind of goals. It's what are the steps that we have to take to make 26 awesome? What is our ideal outcome from those steps? When are we going to get started? And when are we going to finish? And then we're going to rank all of these different actions to come up with really what is our plan for number of homes sold? How much will that create in volume? How much GCI or commission will we earn from that? And then what are the skills that I need to develop? So Debbie has no idea that I was going to do this. I just kind of threw it on her. I want to show you my simple business plan, Debbie. If I was coaching an agent today, this is what I would do with them. It's literally this simple. And this is exactly what I did for my business early on. And I simply follow the math. Let's pretend, Debbie, for a second that you and I figured out that for you to hit your goals, you need to sell 24 properties next year. It doesn't matter if it's 240 properties or 24, just follow the math with me. Okay. Debbie, in a good agent's business, it shouldn't be all buyers or all sellers, right? What's the kind of right balance that you see?
It's in the last couple of years, I've noticed a lot more 50-50 with the strong agents. In the past, we would prefer probably 60% listings. But I don't think 50-50 is a bad thing. I would be worried if it's heavily weighted on the buyer side, because what do buyers buy? They buy listings.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pretend, Deb, that this year your goal is to have a balanced business. How many buyers are you going to sell this year?
12.
Okay. Write down 12 buyers. And then how many sellers are you going to sell this year? Okay. Write down 12 sellers. And I would write it down in a way where you have one on the left and one on the right. Follow me? Okay. Debbie, does every buyer that gets pending close? No. So let's say we're going to be really, really pessimistic in our business planning. Let's pretend that at the end of the year, only half of the buyers that we got pending close because of inspections, appraisal, finances, or it's still pending at the end of the year and we haven't got them all done yet. That would mean you would need how many buyers pended?
24.
24. Do every listing that we take actually sell?
Nope.
Nope. It's because some were still active at the end of the year. Some cancel, some expire, some turn out to be crazy. Some you never actually get on the market. Let's be pessimistic again, Debbie, and say we need twice as many listings taken as we actually need close, and this is being very, very pessimistic, let's double it again. What would that be?
Or
Okay. In order to get 24 buyers pended and to get 24 listings listed, we need to meet and do a certain amount of buyer consults and a certain amount of listing presentations, right? So what I would say is let's be really, really pessimistic and assume that we're actually pretty crappy at that. Let's double that.
Okay.
Let's say that we need to do double the amount of buyer consultations that we actually get pending and double the amount of listing presentations that we actually get listed.
48 and 48.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Now, Deb, you don't get sick very often, but how many days a year do you think you're going to be sick or not feeling your best?
One. Never. I don't get sick very often.
Uh,
Let's say 5.
okay. Let's say that you're going to go visit your daughter in London for a week. You're going to take some more vacations. You're going to do a little bit of investing in your own mind and your own career. Go to some classes, go to some events, which you and I like to go to. Let's say when you add up being sick, vacation, and education, it's 4 weeks. Okay. How many weeks are there in a year, Debbie?
8,
48. 52?
but 48 left.
Yeah, and you subtract 4, you have 48. So what does that really tell you that you have to do every single week?
I have to get a listing and I have to get a buyer under agreement.
No, that's not what the math says. If you go down to your 48 number, those were appointments, Deb.
That's right.
To get
Okay.
24 sold guaranteed, you need to meet with one buyer every single week, and you need to meet with one seller every single week.
That's a lot easier.
That's pretty simple, isn't it? And do you think those numbers that I just went through with you are pessimistic based on your experience?
%. Yeah, I've been tracking this across our client base, and while we all know that cancellations are at a higher level than I've seen for a very long time, they're running around 20%. So I think in a great market, it might be 10%, and 10% of listings don't sell. But if we're doing this based on 50%, totally realistic, totally safe numbers.
Which probably means if you actually followed this plan, you wouldn't sell 24, you'd sell 30 or 36, or you'd sell 24 the first year, but you'd have so much built up business that the next year you would sell 30 or 40. What would happen, chat, if we woke up every single day and our only goal was to find one person to meet with, one buyer or one seller? It makes it so simple. By the way, if you're running a team and your team goal is 240 closed sales, your goal would be to get 120 of those buyers and 120 of those to be sellers sold. You probably wouldn't need the 50-50, but you could work the math out in the same exact way. And you could say, hey, our goal every single week is to get 10 buyer appointments and 10 seller appointments. If you did both of those, you'd probably sell 500 homes, not 240.
And back to the thought about setting a really, really high goal. My thought is always then you work the math backwards, because if you pick a certain number, you've got to go backwards just like you did and say, am I capable or willing to do the activities that it would take? Because most everyone here could hit a really, really high goal, but they have to look at that, look at their market, look at their skill, look at their time invested and their willingness to do what's hard. And I think that will really tell them what is the real goal.
everybody, when you break it down this far, it makes success really clear and it makes success really, really easy. I think that's an important thing for you all to think about, is breaking it all the way down to that. Now, once I broke it down to the number of appointments that I needed, the next thing that I would do would be I would focus on where would those appointments come from. And I actually don't think it matters. I think you could generate all of this business model just from open houses. I think you could generate all of this business just from Sphere if you were consistent about networking and meeting people and getting in front and having those conversations, so long as you kind of followed a real Sphere plan. I think you could generate all of that from canceled expireds and FSBOs. And you could probably generate it from internet leads and other stuff, but that's probably an expensive way to approach it. But it's very, very possible. Any other thoughts on that, Deb?
I mean, I know an agent in Hawaii that does 60 million in volume on open house, but they have an incredible strategy. They know people go to the beach in the morning and come home in the afternoon. So they open in the morning, they close midday, they come back in the afternoon into the evening. They do it every single day of the week. They have a process, it's predictable, and they've honed that process over time. Then we have our friend Adam Dow, who is an amazing team leader and agent in New Hampshire. And Adam's business, he has built his business on influencer relationships, not social media, but people in his small town, whether it's the mayor or some other leader that he's built these relationships with. So yes, I think and expired canceled, what an enormous opportunity in this moment, because Ben, a lot of agents have never encountered a market where they had to service their sellers and get price reductions. They don't really know how to do that. And so these listings are canceling or expiring. So yeah, however, Ben, when people come to us for coaching, here's my advice. It's number one, find the thing that you do best and do it perfectly. Then take the next action item, the next lead gen lever, and perfect a plan. And then when you've executed that well, add another, because you and I feel that ultimately their best insurance is to have 5 or 6 strong lead gen levers that will make the business smooth, right? Because if you just rely on one, you may have some gaps in the year.
We came up with this idea for a company that Debbie and I built called Place. And Place is a platform for top teams and agents to grow their business. We help them with everything. Accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, legal, HR, agent productivity, technology, all that kind of stuff. But we were on a call about a year ago, and there was an agent very similar to Eeyore who lost his tail again that day. And he was struggling, and he goes into chat and starts talking about how hard it is. And he was asking for advice. And I was in a rather spicy mood that day. So I said, just frickin' do something about it. Get off your butt and just get back to work. Your paychecks are hidden underneath your work boots. It's why so many real estate agents have a hard time finding them. And this agent came back and said, well, I'll do anything you tell me to do. What should I do? And I said, you should do whatever it takes. You should do an extreme amount of activity at a level that you've never done before and just see if you can make it work. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And at the end, here's what I told him. I said, do me a favor. Just go do 30 open houses in 30 days, minimum 2 hours each, but just go do it. And then if you do, you can come spend a day with me. And a whole bunch of people in chat goes, hey, if we do that, could we come spend a day with you too? I'm like, sure. Anybody on the call today, if you decide to do it, you track it using the Brivity Open House app, you can spend a day with me. Thinking that I'd have a couple people over to my house and entertain them. Uh, 144 people, Debbie, completed that first 30 open houses in 30 days. This gentleman walks up to me and says, "Hey, been in the business 10 years. I don't know what happened, but I hadn't had a closing in like 6 months. I was thinking about quitting or retiring." And I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I did the competition." And I said, "Okay, how are you doing now?" He says, "I have 8 pending or closed." Another agent comes in, so I was brand new. I hadn't done any business yet. I was thinking about getting a job or driving Uber. I didn't know what to do. And I just said, "Screw it. I'm going to trust you." And I did the challenge. And I said, "What happened?" And he said, "I have 4 pending or closed." Like person after person. So we did a second challenge 3 months later where we challenged people to do 5,000 dials in 2 months or 50 open houses. And if they did both, they could come have dinner at my house, because who's going to call 5,000 people in 2 months and also do 50 open houses? I thought I'd have a couple people at my dinner table. But instead, I had 500 people do one of the two and 170 people at my house for dinner. And it completely changed the trajectory of their businesses because they got focused on the activity, and the activity drives the results. It wasn't complicated. Buy a bunch of leads, create a billboard, spend a bunch of money, create videos everywhere. It wasn't like that. It was literally simple. Just simple. The simplest way, just do the activity.
Yeah, I think we overcomplicate things in this business. It is no doubt a hard business. It is a hard business. And the reason it's hard is we all have to get up every day and talk to strangers and motivate ourselves to take action. And most of the world doesn't want to do that. But the reality, Ben, when it comes down to it, if you put yourself in places where there are people, there are leads, right? And if we're not getting enough business, bottom line, we're not putting ourselves in those situations to see enough people.
Yeah. I'm watching chat here, Deb, and some people are asking about open houses, if you don't have listings. What I found was a lot of the people that did the competition had no listings. They borrowed them from other agents of the brokerage, or they found other brokerages to do them, listings at other brokerages. Nobody cared. Here's the other thing. You can't do 30 open houses in 30 days and do them all on Sunday. So they did them Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. They did them in the mornings. They did it at nights. Talked to a guy the other day that sold a $1.7 million house, and the person came in at 9 a.m. to one of his open houses.
So Ben, I see what Ann just posted too. Call a FSBO and do an open house for them. Absolutely. Builders often with product sitting on the shelf will let you hold their open houses, right? So, and Ben, to your point, there's a great guy here in Orange County that he was at our first event you and I did together when we partnered, and he had been a jewelry store owner. So he was used to people walking in, talking to him at the counter, selling him jewelry. Open house just made sense to him. I'm going to set up shop and people are going to come in. His first year in the business, he begged, he borrowed, he did anything he could to get an open house and worked a pretty big territory because he had to. And he held them 7 days a week from 9 until dark. Obviously houses where homeowners weren't home, and he could make his calls and do his work. And his first year as a brand new agent, he sold 44 houses, and they were all from open house.
Yeah. And if you want 2026 to be the best year of your career and you want a little bit of a tailwind, then you do that challenge now. You go and you do the activity before next year starts, so that next year starts busy. Make January the best month of your career, because when you're done setting your business goals that Deb and I talked about here, number of homes sold, volume closed, GCI earned, number of agents hired, whatever that might be, the next thing is you got to set some financial goals. What is the income that you would like to make in 2026? Of that income, how much are you going to use to pay down your debt? Will that generate any sort of passive income for you? How much of that extra income are you going to invest next year? And how will that change your net worth? I'm surrounded by people that have opportunities to be millionaires, but never will become them because they don't make small, consistent decisions. I've shared before, but it only takes $257 invested every month for 30 years to end up with $1 million in your stock account. $257 invested simply in the S&P 500 equals $1 million. $100,000 invested every year for the next 10 years and you never add another dollar invested in the S&P 500 is around $22 million. It doesn't take a massive amount to create a massive amount. It creates discipline and consistency. The same things that Debbie talked about for your business happens in your financial world. You just got to have an income goal. What percentage of that are you going to be able to save? Of that amount that you save, half goes to debt, half goes to your net worth. And then over time, it compounds and it turns into something really massive.
So Ben, before we go to the personal goals, if we go back one more slide, go back to where you just were. So where you see income, I think, something with our tech difficulties that we moved through very quickly, which was the spend it on paper exercise. And I really encourage you to sit down and really make a list for yourself of, if this is my income goal for the next year, how much of that do I actually need to support my life and my business? How much do I need to pay my taxes? Because we don't want to forget that. And I want to set that aside from each check. How much is left over? And exactly what will I do with every single penny? Because Ben, here's a couple of things I found from 100,000 plus coaching sessions over 25 years. Many of the agents potentially on this webinar don't actually know what their monthly overhead is, business and personal. And maybe that's because someone else in the household pays the bills, which is great, but you got to visit your money every month. You need to know, how much do I actually need to earn to be okay? And then you need to start that great habit of setting aside money for tax. But then the important part too of figuring out, what will I actually do with the extra money? That's what keeps you from becoming complacent. So Ben, if I went home and said to my husband, hey, if I achieve my goal this year, I'm going to have an extra $75,000 left over, and let's spend it. Would we pay off that credit card? Would we take the kids to Hawaii? What would we set up a reserve account? And together we spend that. Now my spouse or partner is going to get pretty excited about that $75,000 that I just said I'm going to earn over and above. Now I have that purpose that we started off talking about, right? But if they don't really know what their overhead is, they don't really know what they do with the money, there's not a strong financial plan, it's really easy to go, I'm getting by. I think I'll take a break today.
Yeah. If you were trying to put your goals in like a triangle, and you're going to triangulate this kind of your life, you got your business, you got your finances, and the next piece is your personal goals. What do you want to do for your health this year? What do you want to do for personal growth? What do you want to do for experiences? What do you want to do for the people that mean the most to you in your relationships? What are your spiritual goals? And you got to have all three of these things to have a really good, fulfilled life. And when you don't have those, you wake up 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, and nothing's changed in certain areas of your life. Simply by writing it down and sharing it with something, there's a much higher probability of better things happening in your life. Take it away, Deb.
Yeah, the business plan should be a living, breathing document. I remember my first broker said to me, if I meet with you for a coaching session and you don't have taco sauce and coffee spilled on this plan, if it's not dog-eared and tattered, then I know that you're not looking at it. And one of the things that he recommended to me, and I think it was really important, is that every Sunday night, as I was preparing for my week, that I get that plan out and I review my plan. And of course, if you're in coaching with us, then every quarter, we're going to be reviewing and tracking. If you're a Brivity customer, then you showed that dashboard, which made me think of a couple of things. That makes it really easy to keep eyes on your plan in a really simple way. And it also makes it easy to watch your ratios of conversion. So you can start to, over the course of the year, really fine tune that success blueprint, because you know that, no, I don't take 50% of what I go out on. I take 75% of what I go out on. So it's really important to review the plan, the numbers, the dashboard, to review that every single week.
I love that you said that your business plan is a living and breathing document. What that really means, it's elastic. It has elasticity, and it moves and evolves over time, because you might get a quarter of the way in the year and maybe way further ahead than you ever imagined. So you need to evolve it into a much bigger plan, or you may be way far behind. So you need to change your strategies to evolve, but have it in front of it yourself is super important. You don't want to end up like a giraffe with your head in the clouds, the entire time. You want to know that your goals in your life are actually realistic. And I think, Deb, that comes with having this accountability mindset.
Ben, I get up at 4:15 in the morning. I know you're usually up all night working and you probably go to bed at 4:15, but I get up at 4:15. People always say to me, "You're so disciplined." But Ben, it's none of us are born disciplined. That's because for 25 years, I had East Coast coaching clients. So, 6 a.m. California time is 9 a.m. East Coast. There's a lot of, stockbrokers that do the same. It was a discipline that grew out of just a habit that was forced because I had to show up and I had to be accountable to be ready for work at 6 a.m. Pacific time. So really, if you're saying, but I'm just not disciplined, that's just hard for me. It's actually hard for every single one of us. And that's why I think we all need accountability, which means you are held responsible for doing the things that are expected of you. Ben, I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions. They don't last. You and I talked about this last year with a lot of these folks that joined us, usually because there's not a plan, right? There's not action steps. It's not clear. It's not integrated into the schedule. And often there's no accountability around it, right?
One of my favorite phrases around the word accountability, Debbie, is the lack of accounting means the lack of accountability. If you don't track your numbers, the number of calls it takes to get an answer, the number of answers it takes to get an appointment, the number of appointment it takes to get a listing, the number of listings it takes to get a closing, you're not really being accountable. And technology is solving that for us. Brivity tracks your dials, it tracks your answers, it tracks the number of answers and how much time that you spend on the phone, and you can log an appointment. It'll track it for you, so you don't have to do that. Back in the day, I had a sheet that I had typed 1 through 100, Debbie, probably got the idea from you, and I put a slash through it every time I made a call, and I put an X every time that somebody answered, and I would circle it whenever I got an appointment. And I was able to figure out that it took me 52 dials to talk to 15 people that on average would generate one appointment. Technology is solving that for us, whether it's in our finances or our real estate business or anything. The lack of accounting means the lack of accountability.
I love this quote. You're going to mess up. We're human. So instead of trying to be perfect, just be accountable. And, I always love this time of year, Ben, for the sake of, if we can create our business plan now, if you guys have your business plan completed, then you can use the rest of this year as a dress rehearsal. So if you mess up, if you don't quite have your rhythm or cadence down, by the time the new year begins, you're going to be comfortable. You're going to be in your groove. Because I think the worst is when it's New Year's Day and you wake up and you think, oh my gosh, here I go again. And what is this year going to look like? And I have all these hard things I promised myself I would start on January 2nd. Instead of just, hey, all right, game on. I'm already in action. So it's a good time to mess up the next couple of months.
Accountability around the goal. Our goals should be specific. They should be timely. We should be able to measure it. They should be attainable. And they should be relevant to what we want to accomplish in life. And when you pick goals that lack one of these 5 things, they rarely happen. You get disappointed. You disengage. You stop taking action.
Yeah. It made me think of someone who came to us for coaching and said to me, my goal is to sell 100 houses next year. And I'm like, that's an awesome goal. How many did you sell last year? 32. How many did you do the year before that? 28. And I said, I'm just curious, do you have a new builder account? No. Were you part-time? No. Because I'm trying to figure out, how do we go from where she was to 100? Where did that come from? And where it came from was sitting in a room with a bunch of people in a goal setting, activity. And she said, I thought I had to set that number because everybody else was setting these crazy high numbers. And I said, well, what really is your goal? And she said, well, really, my goal is to get to 45. And I said, well, then let's write a plan. And Ben, to your point, we said, let's try to hit that by October 31st, and then we can set a stretch goal. But, it's all about being accountable, which is not comfortable. That's why some of us have a trainer at the gym. I go to Orange Theory. I hate it because they yell at me when I'm being lazy and doing it wrong, but, it's why I have them. And I found this awesome list of habits of highly effective people, Ben. So I think we put a few of those in the deck, did we?
Yeah, number 1, Deb, highly accountable, highly effective people take responsibility, obviously.
Don't make excuses. And I get it. There's realities of market conditions that are not excuses. My listings are longer days on market. I have to work harder to get adjustments. That's not an excuse. It's a reality, but we all know, we've all made those excuses, right? I'm too tired, I'm too busy, life got in the way.
They're on time for their clients, for the people that matter to them. Everything except for webinars. Webinars are allowed to start 3 to 4 minutes delayed.
That's the Ben time schedule for webinars. He just wants to make sure you're all here, right? They control their own fate. You could wait. Perfect example. There are many of you here who have past clients in Sphere who love you. And you will get business from them in this next year. And you could sit by and wait for them to call. That's unfortunately, though, not controlling your own fate.
Yeah, that's why I hate certain types of business. I prefer to make sure that at the end of the day I get an appointment. I don't like to just wonder if I'm going to get it. I like to just make sure that I know that my effort can create the outcome that I want. Number five, highly accountable, effective people own their feelings. They understand they're real, but they don't let them interfere and stop them from accomplishing what they want in their life and taking care of the people that they love.
What do you think when you see this one? Manage expectations.
They manage the expectations of their clients. Deb, this is how long it could take. If we don't receive an offer within this amount of days, we need to sit down and have a conversation about a price reduction. They manage their expectations of their buyers. Hey, I'm going to show you a bunch of homes. The homes I'm going to show you are good homes or quality homes. Are going to sell for close or even over asking. If I show you a home that's been on the market a long time that I think there's a bunch of room, I will tell you that in advance. They manage their staff and their agents and their partners and their vendors, and they expect a lot out of everyone around them.
You know, Ben, I had another thought too. Managing our expectations that everyone will be nice. It's a very stressful time in the real estate market for a lot of buyers and sellers, and sometimes very nice people become not so nice, and we get our feelings hurt, and we're fragile, or we get angry. And I think managing our expectations around how our clients might behave and just guiding and helping them through those tough moments.
Yeah, we collaborate. We get ourselves in rooms with other people. We get a coach. We get masterminds. We get peers together. We join communities and networks and platforms that help each other.
Don't expect praise. Yeah, I think we all love to be acknowledged for the great work that we do. And they may not always be as grateful for the hard work, but you get that paycheck. And Ben, I want to encourage them though, get their reviews, right? Ask for reviews, because if you get those reviews on your tough day, you go back and you read all those great reviews and you remember, yeah, you know, I do a great job. And some of them do actually love me. So, you know, day to day though, it can be a rather lonely and thankless job, which is why, Ben, I think collaboration and community is super important.
We might be ruining our next generation. I think our parents ruined us in our own ways, and I think we ruin our children in new ways, and then it comes around full circle. But I'm unfortunately employ enough people that I see a lot of people that need a lot more praise than probably is warranted in their work and in their life. And I also have to remind myself to be better at giving it, because it does matter to some people more than it matters to me. We've had some very successful people in life that that live by these 8 things that Debbie just shared with us. Go ahead, Deb.
So whether it's your children or maybe your real estate team children, you know, that you are holding accountable or know you should hold accountable, and you feel maybe it's too hard, and I hate to do that. And I found this quote, and I just love it, that being held accountable, it is an act of generosity and compassion. It's actually a gift that someone gives you to correct your wrongs, unlearn, and do things better for the sake of our own growth. So while it may be uncomfortable, it's worth the discomfort. So if you are in that leadership role, you need to embrace the responsibility of holding those in your world accountable. And if you struggle with that, let us know. We'll help you, because the pain and lack of accountability for yourself or others, you miss your goals, poor execution, you avoid important tasks, your priorities are not clear, which then it leads to low motivation, which then leads to a slump. So rewards of accountability, improve performance. You know, Ben, it's so common that when people join coaching, I'm talking good, solid producers, but they will come to us and they will say, I really know that I could be doing 50% more of my production, but I need someone to hold me accountable. And we track these results, and it is very common that when people join us in coaching, if they're willing to show up and do the work, that they truly do double their business. But then they feel happier, they feel more competent, they feel more creative, they have a higher morale. It all just fuels even more success, right? So, it's hard to be disciplined, but the more accountability you create around yourself, the more likely you're going to be to take those actions needed. So you got to ask yourself, who's holding you accountable? And I want to give you a little note of caution here. If you have people in your life who love you, however, they don't understand your business, they don't understand what you're up against and facing every day as an entrepreneur. They may be a little bit like my father-in-law, who passed away a few years ago. Wonderful man, amazing man, love him. However, he didn't understand business. And if I shared my goals with him, he would always say, that seems too hard. Aren't you trying reaching a little high? He was not a good person to hold me accountable, right? So if you have a great broker, if you have an awesome spouse or partner, wonderful. If you need help, then Forward would like to apply for the job of holding you accountable. Ben, when I launched Forward about 15 years ago, and then you and I got together about 5 years ago, we both agreed no contract here, because I want to keep my coaches accountable to show up every month and bring their A game, because if they don't, you can leave. So that's our way of holding ourselves accountable to create those results. So I think many of you have talked to me in the past, and I think that we don't have an aggressive hard sell team here. We have a couple of customer service gentlemen, Ron and Gary, that if you click that QR code, you're going to speak to one of them. They are not salespeople. They will simply ask you questions, gather information for me, and they will get you booked directly to speak to me for a complimentary conversation about, is coaching right for you or not, right? And if it's not at this time, we'll stay friends. Ben and I will invite you to a future webinar. But Ben, like someone said a moment ago, so the economy. So if you had to say in a minute or so, what should we be thinking next year? Should we assume, prepare that it's exactly like this year? Should we think eventually there might be a slight improvement? What should be on our mind as we think about what to expect is ahead?
Well, I think what I can do is I saw a couple of you in chat asking for more economic data. I could spend 30 to 60 minutes with Debbie next month going through the entire economy. If you guys want to go into chat, and we'll schedule it if you think it's worthwhile, we can really dive into the numbers that you should know and the numbers that you should share with your people. We've built a bunch of tools that you all should be aware of. We built a tool called Area Pro, where you can actually get access to information about the economy and bring it into your business and turn it into blog posts and emails and scripts and video scripts and all of that. And we negotiated a little bit of a discount for you guys from Area Pro. I'd be happy to do that call in December with you, Deb. We'll get something scheduled on the books if you guys want to nerd out on the economics, and I'll bring in a whole bunch of charts and nerdy Goldman Sachs data. Other than that, appreciate you all. Like, if you're a team and you want to explore Place, and you feel like you need a partner in your business, please do us a favor, check out Place. If you need some more listing leads, go to LandVoice. Thanks for them supporting us on our calls. They're really awesome at generating cancelled, expired, and FSBO information. Of course, a lot of you are already Brivity customers, but if you're not, do yourself a favor. Get all your technology in one location from one company that integrates well. It'll solve a lot of problems in your life. Anyway, I appreciate you all being on the call today and spending time with Debbie and I. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you in December, Ben. We're going to hold them accountable. All right, guys, have a great day. We will see you soon. Bye-bye.